Hey guys, what's up? It's Star, and I'm back with more Animal Crossing content. With E3 right around the corner, I wanted to get a bunch of my favorite ideas about Animal Crossing Switch right out there for everyone to hear. I've got literally hundreds written down, but I've managed to compile a list of my top 10 things I want to see in the next game, so let's get right down to it. And just a quick disclaimer, this list is in no particular order. Number 1, Pocket Camp integration. So Pocket Camp's pretty controversial. Like, half the people I talk to don't want any sort of Pocket Camp integration whatsoever, but in my opinion, Pocket Camp introduces like a ton of really nice looking items, as well as it has a handful of concepts that are very interesting. For example, holiday events, having different event items and different activities every single year. In the game, it's nice to have the holiday events that they have, but I feel like I don't want to do them every year because after the first year, I already got all the stuff from it. So it's just kind of like a little novelty rather than, oh, I'm decorating my whole town Halloween and I got all these new events and this new items that are Halloween related coming into the game. So on that hand, it would be very nice to have Pocket Camp in the game, or like events similar to that come over into the new game. So basically, the main things I want from Pocket Camp is the ability to transfer all the items that you get from the game. So items, terrains, basically anything that you can obtain from Pocket Camp, transfer it over. Have all those transferred items be tradable within the game because you can't trade in Pocket Camp, as well as maybe making all the events within Pocket Camp run simultaneously on the Switch game, such that maybe you have some progress on the mobile app, then you get home, you start playing on your Switch, and the progress is linked between them, so you get the items simultaneously on both, and you can take the event activities on the go. As well as like a linked friends list. I think that's pretty much all you would need for integration between the two games. With number 2, we have the ability to travel to different towns of different biomes, which you can customize and explore even move to. I had this idea a while back after playing Happy Home Designer. I noticed that when you're selecting where you want to put your villagers, or the villager that you're designing's house, you can pick different areas, and some of those areas are in different biomes, like desert. So I came up with the idea of like, what if in the new game you start with like a mid-sized forest town, like what you're used to having, but maybe later on you get some news, hey, there's another town way out and it's having some trouble, like the mayor just quit and they need somebody to run it. Would you like to head out there? And you can take the train out there, you can head out to that different town, you can basically get a mini town and expand it slowly over time, maybe make it larger, as well as decorate it. There could be different bugs and fish there that are exclusive to those regions, and they could have a couple different biomes like desert, jungle, and they could even make it so there's like an underwater area that you can dive to with a special scuba suit or something. I know they have the underwater terrain from Pocket Camp, and fish villagers are something I've wanted for quite a while, so that'd be really interesting if they could figure out how to make that work. But basically just the ability to utilize different biomes rather than just have forests would be really, really interesting to see in any way, shape, or form. And I think because it's been in Happy Home Designer and they introduced the terrains from Pocket Camp, I think it's a pretty decent chance that we could see this in the next game in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not the exact idea that I had. Number 3, we have path integration. So before New Leaf, I feel like paths weren't that mainstream, but after New Leaf, they really started to take off, especially with the QR design system. That was the main feature that pretty much brought it into like the light for everybody else that didn't have the time or effort or artistic skill even to make really nice looking paths. So a tool that would make it even easier would be really nice, like making it so you can place them really quickly, as well as a pro design specifically designed for paths. That way with one design you can make a path and place it, rather than having to take up 9 different design slots for every which way that you can place it. As well as making that pro design support transparency so that you can make it blend in better with the environment. You can just place a stepping stone and everything else is transparent, and then when you place it on the ground, it just looks just completely just like a stone on top of the ground, as well as making it so certain sounds play when you walk on top of them. so it sounds like you're walking on a stone instead of just the grass. I know Pocket Camp actually does have integration with paths in some way, shape, or form. There's items that are paths that you can place. So I think asking for paths and having like built-in paths in the game, like for example, they have like a bunch of different ones that you can buy, and then you can also make your own custom ones, is a very likely thing that we'll see in the next game. Number 4, this is a really simple and quick one, but basically the ability to pick where villagers can move in. A lot of people, they're designing their paths, they're designing flower beds and public works, and they're planning everything out a certain way, and then a villager just moves in the middle of everything and ruins everything, and it'd just be really nice to be able to select where they can move. Just picks plots of land. This is where these specific spots are the only places villagers can move in, and that's it. That would be really nice, and a lot of people definitely want that. Number 5 is another one of my ideas, dynamic house upgrades. So basically the way this would work is instead of upgrading your house by adding a new room or expanding an existing room by a specific predetermined way, you would, whenever you upgrade your house, you would add square footage or a new floor to your existing house, and you can add the square footage however you want. So maybe this upgrade adds 20 square feet, so you can just put 20 squares, attach it to your room however you want, and you can draw your walls however you want. You can draw where the doors go, and you can highlight areas which are considered different rooms. So maybe this area has to be considered a certain room for wallpaper and flooring purposes. You can put a door there. This can, like, you can make like a 2x2 area, and this is just a closet. And then you can have like hallways. And if you had a huge limit for the max size for your house, there's a ton of different things you'd be able to do with this. You'd be able to make like big hotels with long hallways and tons of rooms on the sides, and an elevator to different floors. You'd also be able to pick where the stairwells and the elevators go. And as I said, you'd be able to pick between stairs and elevators. So yeah, there's just a ton of different things you would be able to do with this, and it'd be a really simple idea to implement. And basically, you just add squares to the rooms instead of adding predetermined upgrades. So I'd really love to see this in the game, because it just opens the door for so many different options for house customization. Number 6, we have villagers have more personality. I feel like in the earlier games, especially with the GameCube version, they were a lot more like unchained with what kind of dialogue they were okay with the villagers having. Like some villagers were very rude to you, and I feel like certain villager personalities, it fits much better. And nowadays they feel like they're all kind of blending together. Everyone seems like just a very slight variation of just the basic template. And I really like it to be like more fleshed out. Like maybe have lazy villagers, just not like you ask them to do something with you and they're just like, I don't feel like it. Or like a grumpy villager, they just like essentially curse you out. Obviously not with any harsh language, but like they just say they don't like you. Or like same with snooty villagers, which are to me pretty much the equivalent of grumpy villagers except for female. But yeah, that would be like really interesting if they actually had their own more fitting dialogue and interactions, as well as a few touches. Basically, like each villager archetype has its own unique sounding voice. I feel like all the male characters and all the female characters all sound the same except the grumpy ones, which are the only ones I can tell any difference between. And an even bigger touch would be like a little sound filter for each animal species. Like hamsters sound a little more high-pitched, dogs have like more of a raspy voice, like rough sounding. Cats maybe like high-pitched, almost meowing sound like, or maybe have like a little meows put in there. I don't know. You could figure out whatever to make every villager species sound different from each other, and I think that'd be like a really nice touch, and I think sound filters would probably be the easiest way of doing that. Number 7, we have everything comes over from Happy Home Designer. So Happy Home Designer, most people just think, oh, they added villager front yards as well as customizable villager homes. But there's actually there's a few other things that were added in the game. Obviously those 2 additions are pretty big. I definitely want having a front yard in my house, and seeing villager front yards and being able to customize their homes and front yards would be very nice as well. But a couple other ones that I'd like to see come over were the customizable structures. So in Happy Home Designer, you could actually customize different buildings that you could put in your town square. The one difference I would want for this would be to be able to actually have them as public works that I can choose to put in my town, and maybe have multiple of the same different kind of variation. So I could have 2 restaurants instead of just 1, or 2 stores and no restaurants, like stuff like that. And a big difference that I also want for this would be having like designate certain areas to be like worker only areas. So maybe this, like, you must have at least 1 worker in the store. So you can't have somebody sitting at like one of the restaurant tables without having anybody sitting behind the counter. So that would make like a lot of sense, as well as having some specific villager dialogue for the workers only. So like, oh man, there's not a lot of people coming in today if the store is empty, or like, ooh, it's a busy day, stuff like that. Obviously you can take that and run with it. The few other things that they added in Happy Home Designer were ambient sounds. For rooms, you could select like ambient sounds besides just playing music or gyroids. And they also had hanging decor, so things hanging from the ceiling. They had a customizable sign that acted as like a menu, and you could switch it between like cafe and like fast food restaurants, stuff like that. So that was really nice, and obviously there's a lot of other things you can hang from the ceiling, so that would be really good to see in the next game. And I think most of this, at least the front yards and the hanging decor, would at least come over. For customizing villager homes, I think only having it enabled if you're like really good friends with them would be nice, or maybe have a job. I know a lot of people mentioned across different YouTube channels that they wanted to be able to have jobs in Animal Crossing. So having jobs at like these different stores that you make, or having jobs customizing villagers' homes would be an interesting addition to the game as well. Number 8, more methods of making money. So I feel like one of my biggest issues with New Leaf was the fact that the only really good method of making money was basically cutting down everything on the island and catching bugs by running back and forth between 2 palm trees that you had on the island. It was very fast, like 200 to 300,000 an hour, but essentially it blew everything else out of the water to the point where nothing else really felt good. So a few other ideas that I came up with were as follows. Turnips are purchasable by 1,000s or 10,000s and stack more easily on 1 slot. I feel like this is really what held them back in New Leaf, was the fact that they just took too long to purchase them and they took up too much inventory. So that'd be really nice. More public works that influenced rates of certain rare creatures from appearing, so you can catch them in your town and not just on the island. In City Folk, the lighthouse actually increased the chances of rare fish appearing by 20%, I believe. So some stuff like that would make it more interesting and make your town more useful for farming bugs and fish. A fruit basket tool is another idea I had. Basically, when you hold it, instead of fruit going on the ground, it would just go right into your inventory. And most of you know that you can actually group fruit into 5 on 1 inventory slot. So this fruit basket tool would also auto group them when they're put in your inventory automatically. Another related thing to that would be making it so when you plant a perfect fruit, it would grow into a perfect fruit tree that would always grow perfect fruit, instead of, I believe, only the first time it would grow perfect fruit and then it would just grow back to growing normal fruit. Another fruit related thing is each town having a regional tropical fruit, and the other ones are worth more, similar to how you have a regional normal fruit and the other ones are worth more. There's a bunch of different fruit in the game. There's durians, lychee, lemons, other stuff like that. So having each of these, having only one tied to your town and the rest be out of region, would be really nice for making additional money. But another nice touch would, related to this, that it's not really money related, but it would just be more interesting to have, is if the tropical fruit trees all shared one tropical fruit tree model. So like they look different from the normal trees, because it feels weird having like a durian tree look the same as like an apple tree. It'd be nice if all the tropical trees look more tropical. They could also change it so that tropicals fruit are more valuable, but they only grow fruit at certain times of the year if they're planted in your town. but maybe they fruit all year round on the island, but the island's smaller, so you can't have a huge orchard. Something like that would make it even more interesting. A few other ideas I had were having public works that specifically generate certain resources or income. For example, a bee house can generate daily honey, and you can place that on stumps to get rare fish, or rare insects, I mean, in just like instantly, essentially. Or just maybe like super rare insects that are like 50,000, you place it, you come back, and oh look, there's a 50,000 bug right there, and if you're good, you can catch it. Something like that would be really interesting. Being able to sell duplicate fossils to blathers for an additional profit if the museum already has them, or maybe if only after like every single fossil has been donated to the museum, you can have that. And a big bonus value for fully completed sets, so like you have the T-Rex tail, torso, and head, it would sell for maybe triple the value of the individual parts combined. And another big idea that I had was a weekly Sunday flea market. Sunday is probably the least interesting day of the week in Animal Crossing, because on every other day, it feels like you can have random people come and appear in your town. Random special villagers can appear on the days of the week, and then Saturdays are usually reserved for event days, whereas Sunday is always kind of just Joan, unless it's a special holiday, which are only like once a year. So during this weekly flea market, villagers and you can sell items to each other. You can haggle prices to sell or buy things at different values for with like a really interesting system. Like prices depend on their favorite themes. So like grumpy villagers have the favorite theme of harmonious. So harmonious items would be valued higher by them. So if they're selling it, they'd want more money out of it. And if they're buying it from you, they'd also be willing to pay more for it. And also friendship could affect the prices differently as well. So for example, if you're really good friends with a grumpy villager, maybe they would expect you to give them a discount, and they'd also expect more money out of you. But if you're friends with like a motherly figure, or I don't remember I think it's Uchi it's called. In Japanese it's Aniki, which means like older sister, but maybe they would be more willing to pay more and give you discounts instead when you're good friends with them. So depending on the villager type, it would really play into like the different amounts of money they would expect from you, depending on how good a friend they are to you. So it would basically play in more with their personalities and really make the whole system a little more interesting. And the final idea I had for making money was making shells a little more useful. So like having random oysters. Like if you open the oyster, you can get a random sized pearl, and the bigger pearls have more value, obviously. Or maybe being able to craft jewelry out of them, or make furniture that you can sell or use yourself. That'd be pretty interesting. But I think that pretty much sums up all my ideas about all the different money-making methods I could come up with for all the different things that already exist in the game. Number 9, we have better online. So obviously when you're paying for online, you expect a little more out of it than the previous games. New Leafs was pretty clunky when it came to visiting and leaving people's towns, where everybody had to save and stop what they're doing. So if they could just kind of speed that up, or figure out a different system to prevent item duplication that didn't involve everybody stopping what they're doing and saving, that'd be really nice. Having a solid trading system is definitely something that the game needs, especially if it's moving towards more online interactions with random people you don't know. Having interaction disabled with the town by default would also help with that as well, so that if somebody that you don't know it comes to your town, they can't destroy your flowers, pick up your items, chop down your trees. Everything like that is disabled unless you specifically enable it. Like maybe you want them to like help you make an orchard and you want to help them plant trees and stuff like that. They can do that with you if you specifically enable it, but otherwise it wouldn't be enabled by default. Maybe also have it so you can visit other players' towns when they're not there, instead of basically just having it like a dream town to visit people's towns. That'd be really interesting. As well as maybe having like a marketplace where you can like list items for sale, so that other people visit your town, they check it out, they see what items you're selling, and then they can like it'd be like a physical structure as opposed to Pocket Camp's like market box where you can just list items and it's just in a menu. I think that'd be a lot more interesting. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all it needs. Besides maybe like a hub area where you can meet up with other players and maybe do events and stuff. That would also be pretty interesting. But yeah, I think that's pretty much covers it all for online interactions. And number 10, we have more events. So basically just add in more holidays, such as like Valentine's Day I know is missing in Animal Crossing. There's a lot of events that exist in only certain regions that I think should just be made available everywhere. It doesn't matter, like, just open Animal Crossing up for new culture. Like, it doesn't matter if they don't celebrate it in that country. Just, I think everyone just wants to know about it. And it just adds more interesting things to do in the game, as well as having additional events that are exclusive to Animal Crossing. And as the mayor, you'd be able to schedule when these events are. So things like Sports Day would come back, and as the mayor, you'd be able to pick which day is best for you to host that event. So just a lot of different Animal Crossing events that you can schedule yourself as mayor would be really interesting to have in the game, and add a lot of depth to the game, and another role for the mayor duty in the town, which would be really interesting. And that about sums up the top 10 list of the features that I want to see in Animal Crossing Switch. So let me know in the comments below which ones you liked, which ones you'd like to see in Animal Crossing Switch as well. Let me know all your thoughts and ideas, and basically I just love to see all sorts of different ideas about everything that we could see in the next game coming up. So post in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a like, give me a subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.